Okay, Acts chapter 14, verses 24 through the end of the chapter. This is Paul and Barnabas on their adventures here. So, after going through Pisidia, they came into Pamphylia, and when they had preached the word to Perga, they went down to Attalia. From Attalia, they sailed back to Antioch, where they had been committed to the grace of God for the work they had now completed. On arriving there, they gathered the church together and reported all that God had done through them and how he had opened a door of faith to the Gentiles. And they stayed there a long time with the disciples. Doug, preach the word.
I told Sean I just wanted to hear him read those names. Paul had asked if I would kind of update or inform you a little bit about the International Studies department or part of Sunset. You're very familiar with residential. Those of you who are students, you are part of that, and you see that every day. And you're also probably very familiar with external studies across the street, where you get your notebooks, your textbooks, but they also, you may not be aware of the amount of international and nationwide shipping that they do of Sunset Materials. They have a ministry which is very broad and maybe not as broad as international. But I want to share with you a little bit about international. International is, let's see if this will work. Okay. Let me see. There we go. Yeah. International, well, this is kind of an outdated map. It's really difficult to keep the map up to date because it does change constantly. International began in 1997 with 5 schools. They were located in Ethiopia and Mexico, Ukraine, Russia, and Athens, Greece were the schools. That quickly grew. By the time we came back and started working in 2000, it had grown to about 20 schools. Today, it has grown to over 105 ministry training partners that are, let me see. You just follow with me if you want. 105 training centers that are in 38 different countries. Now that is comprised of about 2/3 of those are physical campuses where people sit in classrooms just like you. Well, no, they're not just like you sit in. They are vastly different than what you sit in. You have air conditioning. You have padded seats. Many times they have a bench that they sit on. When we were with our students in Ukraine, there were no desks. They had a piece of cardboard that they held in their lap that they wrote on. And for the most of the time when we would teach, it took a little while to get used to kind of learning who they were, because all I ever saw was the top of their head while they were bent down writing and stuff. So yeah, there's that experience. But it has grown now to over 38 different countries. Many of those have branched out with their own extension schools. Recently, Luis and I were in Toluca, Mexico, and they were sharing with us how they have 7 extension campuses and 240 students branched out of the school in Toluca, and the work that they're doing there. But it is also, go ahead, next one. These are the faces of those that you see around here. There's Luis Melendez, that office is with us across the street. I think he's in Guatemala right now. I've lost track of him. I believe he's in Guatemala right now. And he oversees and is our coordinator with our Latin American schools. The next one is Princeton, that you know. Princeton works with our schools in Asia, which that encompasses, not like you would think like Japan, that region. It is India up to South Korea. Anything in that region is what we consider Asia. And then the next one is Dan Goodyear. That you may occasionally see him around here. He's usually here at workshops. Dan is a veteran missionary, served in Lesotho, has been to, I have no idea how many different African nations that he has visited, but he works with our schools in Central and Western Africa. Then working with him is Clifton Fox, who lives in Waco, and then there's a co-dean working with Dan in Western Africa. The next one is someone that you've never met. Eso Ote Aaron is from Cameroon. He's the guy in the middle in the picture. I know you probably confuse us a little bit, yeah. And this picture was really very unique. It's actually taken in Cairo, Egypt, in the Church of Christ in Cairo. And we went there to present Aaron with his master's degree that he had completed and graduated with honors for that program. Now, Aaron provided the graduation outfits for us, which was great. So there's Paul and I and Aaron, and Amy was there in Cairo to present that. The next one is Terry Harrison, who lives in Houston. He was formerly the dean of our school in Singapore, but as that phased out, he came and transitioned into a role working with Eastern Africa, which is a vast area of schools. It includes everything from Ethiopia down to South Africa, all the way along that eastern coast, Tanzania, Malawi, Kenya, Uganda, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and so that whole area. And then the next is our newest addition is Greg Watson. Greg has come on board and has accepted the role to be our coordinator for the schools in Europe and working with those. And then a brand new addition is his wife, Asta. Asta is our coordinator of women's studies for the International Division of International Studies. She will be working with schools in all over of our scope, working with them to help develop women's curriculums and to help promote events for the ladies, ladies' studies, ladies' seminars, workshops, helping in that area and developing that. She's already begun putting together the curriculum and also making contact with schools in Africa where they are already active in much of this. Again, the school in Toluca has a Phoebe program, which is a whole series of lessons for the ladies, and she'll be incorporating all this to design a international, universal women's curriculum that will be applicable wherever. And then next is our disciple trips. That's part of international. I don't know if you know that. A lot of people don't, but it's a perfectly integrated ministry that serves to introduce people to their first experience with something outside of America. And it gives them a taste of what the world is like, a very big world out there. And they come back sometimes very, very excited and want to know more. And that will either lead to going to AIM or our residential program, and hopefully long-term going as a missionary or working somewhere overseas in the expansion of the kingdom. And the faces that are part of that. Next. Yeah, Darren, and I love that picture of Darren. Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know if she's amazed at Darren or the camera or what it is, but yeah, she's enthralled with something out there. All right, next slide, yeah. And this is kind of a map of where they've been going, some of the mission trips to Belize, Antigua, Mexico, Liberia. But later this year, we're going to be looking at some other international locations as possible sites for disciple trips and something connected with our international schools in that part. Another part of that is the translation work. Back as the international work began to expand, we quickly realized that there was such a limited number of resources for our students in their native language. Probably one of the first efforts was translating material into Russian. And that was done, they took videotapes and they just dubbed over the voices on the videotapes with somebody else reading in Russian. It was limited in its effectiveness and not always accurate. That's kind of a side story. We were utilizing the tapes of Richard Rogers' teaching on Romans over in Ukraine. And first of all, the students came and they said, would you please just unplug the video? We don't need to see some guy sitting in a chair. He's not even speaking Russian. And so we did that. We just did the audio. Well, then when I gave them their final exam, a lot of the answers to the questions were not what I expected. And finally I said, Richard Rogers did not say this because they were answering questions talking about infant baptism and they were talking about original sin. And I thought, oh, now wait a minute. Yeah, so whoever took the translation took great liberty with the theology in that translation. And so those were deleted. But yeah, the translation now, we have done, go ahead, next one. We are currently working on Telugu for India that will be completed quickly. Urdu for Pakistan. Urdu is also a very well-known language in northern India for over 100 million people. And so Urdu will be very, very effective, very useful in that. And then Chinese, that Ernest Yi and his family are helping us with the Chinese work, hopefully to get it into the hands of people, and also then to use it for our solar players, which are next. You may not be aware, again, in the solar player ministry, which is part of International. Since 2013 and the inception of solar players, we have distributed over 15,000 solar players in various different languages, in Amharic, Arabic, of course, English, Spanish, Portuguese, Creole, and then we're working on the other languages to be a part of that. We're hoping to do a large distribution in Telugu in India of solar players sometime next year. Is kind of in the works. All right, next one. Of course, what we are really all about is ministry training. That was the intent of International Studies when it was launched in '97, was to replicate the Sunset experience, to take Bible training to people in their native setting, in their native language, and most importantly, in their native social economic environment. A lot of studies have shown that when we invite foreigners to come to the States to study, over 90% do not go home. They come here and they fall in love with some little girl at college, and daddy does not want her going back to Monrovia, or they fall in love with Walmart. And I mean, who blames them? You know, about that. They love being here, and so it's difficult to get them to go back. Right, next. Here's some training centers in Latin America. There's Luis standing out front of the church in Havana, Cuba, or the school in Baja California, or El Salvador, or Nicaragua, just to name a few of these. All right, next is our schools in Asia. The top left-hand corner is Indonesia. Then the lower one is India. Above that, in the top right-hand corner there is the Philippines, the Heritage Bible College in the Philippines, which is a great success. Let me tell you guys, the school in Philippines with June Fuentes, all the students get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and go jogging. And then along the way, they stop and they have a devotional along the way. They do that every morning. When they begin school, he has all the students come in and he says, I need some volunteers. And of course, there's always that eager student that, me. He said, you get to go clean the bathrooms and you get to help cook. And they do not hire janitors at the school. They don't hire cooks at the school. They learn to serve one another. It's a great program. And they come out of there with a great servant heart. And churches are waiting in line to have our preachers come work with them. All right, the next, over in Europe, where Greg will be working. There's the picture with the checkerboard floor. That's in Vienna, Austria. Those are Farsi-speaking refugees that are there in Vienna. And there's a great outreach with the Farsi congregation, and Gerhard Krasnig is teaching and baptizing many of the refugees. And there's a school there. Right now, Speedy and Nancy are in Strasbourg, Vienna, and they're Strasbourg, Austria. And they're teaching many of these students and having Bible studies with them. The lower corner is Athens, Greece, our school there in Athens. That has grown. It was one of the original schools. It has grown from being 8 or 9 students to now you typically have 45 or 50 students there in the school. A unique feature about that is not one of them gets a scholarship to come to school. They work full-time, and they come to school on the weekends. They will take classes Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and they will complete the same number of classroom hours as you will do. They do it in 3 years instead of 2, but they do it all while they're working full-time at the same time. The upper corner, whoops, back up. Yeah, that upper corner is the recent graduation of Ukrainian Bible Institute in Kyiv. That was graduation in 2023. Just earlier this year, as they came together to have a graduation. Next. Schools in Africa are, the white building is Tanzania, is one of our newer schools. The one on the lower where you see them with the chairs and stuff, that's in Uganda. And these are just samples. I mean, I could show you, we have 105 schools. I can show you pictures all day and the lower one is South Sudan. I just recently was talking to some of the coordinators in South Sudan, and the new school in Juba has been sending out their students and doing evangelistic outreach. They reported over 75 conversions in the last few months there in South Sudan. It is a ripe location for the Lord and for the Word. All right, next one. And then new training centers that have opened up in Cameroon. This is Well, primarily the work of Brother Eso Eran and his work there in Cameroon. He has opened up 3 different new satellite branches in the last year and a half in Cameroon, where they're reaching out and training more students. And one of the most unique ones is this next one is in Chad. Next. Qumran, Chad. They had a contact with someone that was begging them to come up and to teach the gospel, and they went up and in an outreach converted over, I think they converted 10 people in Chad. And that began the school there in Qumran. Now, Chad is a predominantly Muslim nation where being a Christian is risky business. And so it's a great outreach and a whole new, probably a difficult area, but the Lord is opening doors and working through these schools. Right, next. New training centers are in Liberia. Matter of fact, next week, next Monday, Brother Edmund Borfe from Monrovia, Liberia will be here to speak to you. And after that, we will be signing an agreement with a new school there in Liberia. There's a new school we pronounce it Tanzania. Africans call it Tanzania, and the Kenya and South Sudan are some new schools that started just in the last year that have begun in the spread. All right, go ahead. But it's about ministry training plus. One of the things we've learned in our work with these schools is that we train a lot of men, and we've been training a lot of men, but then we've learned that over nearly 70% of them don't stay preaching for more than a year or 2 years. And the reason is, it's not because they lose their faith or they go off. Some of them will go to denominational groups that will pay them, and that's why they go there. But the main reason is they cannot support their family. And so the initiative began about a year and a half ago to help provide job skills for these people so that they can go out and provide for their family, buy shoes for their kids, put food on the table, and still remain faithful to the gospel in their preaching and teaching. So here's some of the things we've come up with. In Cameroon, they're learning how to provide electricity in a house, to be an electrician. They will go out from this program as certified electricians, and there they have the board where they're learning how to run the circuits and that whole process of that. They will be not journeymen, they will be certified. They'll be licensed when they go out and able to work on their own or for someone and be able to support their family. The next one is in tailoring, both in Lagos, Nigeria, and let me think, both these schools are in Nigeria. One is in Okadasin, and the other one is in Lagos. They're learning to do tailoring with foot treble sewing machines because they won't have electricity. But the key about this is the thing about every school child is required to have a uniform to be able to go to school. And many families cannot afford uniforms. But they can produce uniforms at a reasonable cost that allow these kids to go to school. And also it provides an income for our preachers in the process. Go ahead. Poultry farming in Nigeria. He started with all these, I had a picture of these cute little chicks that were all running around. And within the last about 6 months now, they've grown to be fryer size and producing eggs. And it is an income, a stream of revenue for the school. And they equip these students to go out and to do that. All right, next one. Cell phone repair. This was kind of an idea we had a couple years ago. I'd heard about doing this, and so I went to Han Lee and asked him. He had Han had a mobile phone repair store here in Lubbock, and I went to him and we were talking about this idea, and I said, Han, okay, if you're going to teach me how to repair a cell phone, how long would it take? Do you want to guess? He said 3 hours. I can teach you to repair a cell phone in 3 hours. He said, then I'll give you links to YouTube where you can see more advanced repairs you need to do. The tools are under $50 for the specialized tools to do it. And I thought, hey, this is great. And so we started it in Cameroon. And now Han did not go over to teach, but someone local came and taught. It got the attention of Vodafone at that little store that they started, the repairs. And now they are the licensed representative for Vodafone in that region in Cameroon. And so it is a great potential for that. That's one of the things about cell phones. Everybody has one, and every one of them will break at some time. You're going to break the lens, something, and will need repair. This is one that's kind of unique. The video was supposed to play in the middle, but that's a guy feeding all the little fingerling fish. I think they're tilapia. And they're just this whole mass of fish that are moving, and they're building the tanks there in Ghana, and the lower end is a fence they're building around it to protect their their fish farm. But that's another great potential for income is raising fish and doing that. Right, next. This one is very unique. When they came to me and they said, we want to raise snails, I thought, and I thought, these little bitty things. Now, I know how cells populate. When I was preaching in Abilene, I had an aquarium, and I thought, oh, it'd be cute. I'll put some snails in my aquarium. No, those things populate within a month. In my aquarium, it was full of snails. I had to drain it, flush it, get it all out. So they're very good at reproducing. We know that. But these are not the little bitty snails. You can see that African giant snail that he's holding in his hand. Now, Truett he can attest to the fact that when they're sliced and fried, they're really not too bad, and they are a very high source of protein. And the export of snails in Nigeria has grown by 450% in the last 3 years. There's a huge market for snails. And then Paul was telling me about a friend that raises turtles in Oklahoma. That was a couple years ago, he made 6 figures raising turtles on his farm out in Oklahoma, exporting those to Asia where they're a delicacy. Yeah. So yeah, who knows, snails. That might be, I don't know how well they would grow in West Texas. You'd have to get that special variety though, but yeah. All right, next slide. This was a work in Tanzania, and the picture on the left, we began with 4 walls, or somewhat the semblance of 4 walls. There's a huge stack of old bricks there, but now they have completed the building, and that would become a welding school, is where they'll teach them to do welding. In most of those nations, they have metal gates and metal doors on nearly all their houses, and so there's a big market for welding, and either the repair or the manufacture of these of gates and doors. Right, next. Of course, it also involves an evangelistic outreach. Everything we do is with that focus, that it has to be evangelistic, whether it's internships for the students or whether even if it's vocational. If you have someone there and you're repairing the screen on their cell phone, what a better time than say, hey, let me tell you about the gospel. Or ask them, where do you go to church? Let me tell you about, and it gives a great opportunity to share with others about your faith and your belief in Jesus Christ. So there are evangelistic outreach, like this one next. It was a youth rally in Cameroon. I don't remember the attendance. I don't know if SO told me the attendance number, but 4 were converted, and Brother Aaron is one of the speakers at the youth rally there in Cameroon. Another one in Nigeria, where they had 2,642 young people there for that. 167 congregations represented and 73 conversions that were there. Now we were at a youth rally at the Sin for their graduation later last year in 2022. And again, all the kids got up early in the morning, went running, and they get really involved in it. I don't know if this is maybe a theme, something we need to adopt in our international schools, is make all of them get up and go run in the mornings. I like that for them. I'm not going, but yeah. All right, the next slide. And in our partnership with Healing Hands International, they help to drill water wells for us. And I don't know that you can really appreciate the benefit of clean drinking water. Lubbock water is okay. You may not be your favorite, but it's healthy. The thing is, you don't have to worry about parasites. You don't have to worry about the microorganisms in it. It's such a blessing. Also, I don't have to walk 5 miles to go get water. You can just turn on a tap. And when Healing Hands or others help us to drill a water well, again, here people are waiting in line to be able to get fresh water. And Brother Aaron is standing there in the multicolored, his Joseph coat there, and he's there to preach and to teach while he's there. And most all these water wells always have a plate on them that say it's a gift from the Churches of Christ. And so already it opens the doors in many different places. But that's part of working internationally. We work in close partnership with World Bible School, with Healing Hands, with other brotherhood organizations, and our common goal is the advance of the kingdom and the growth of the gospel. Next slide. This is also part of what we do in outreach. This was last year, the European Vision Workshop. This was in Rome. There were 140 people that came from all over Europe, representing about 21 different nations that were there. You can see Speedy and Nancy. There was Bill Watkins was there. I don't know, yeah, many of the others you wouldn't recognize, but it has become a great source of encouragement. It began, this will be our 7th year when we've been doing this. And it began as just a way of getting all the European missionaries together and encourage them. Europe is a really tough field for evangelism. You're dealing with the intellectual opposition to the gospel, total apathy, in most of the European nations. They've grown up seeing a lot of big, beautiful cathedrals that are empty, very sterile and very empty. And to them, religion has no relevancy in their life at all. And so that has been a great encouragement where we bring together people from all over Europe, and then I try to find speakers who are successful in what they're doing in Europe. And I showcase them and say, you can do the same thing. This could work where you're at. And it's been a big encouragement. This coming year is this next one. It will be October 3rd through the 5th, it's coming up pretty quick, huh, Kristen? Yeah, and it will be in Tirana, Albania, is where we'll be holding it this year. And so already I think we have 90 people that are registered to be there. There'll be a few more, but yeah, it'd be that. But that's part of, go ahead with the next one. That's part of International. That's who we are as a part of Sunset, and that's the next slide. We are Sunset. We are very much a part of this family of what we do. We are an extension of you, to share that very same experience and to expand the kingdom of God. And God has blessed this ministry vastly. So who knows? Maybe as you complete your studies, we can find maybe an internship somewhere. I don't know. Who knows? With 105 locations, there's all kinds of options out there. So God bless you. God bless you in your study. Thank you.